This is Comic Geek Speak, Book of the Month Club, Episode 10, V for Vendetta. And welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Brian Deemer.
I'm Matt.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Jamie D.
I'm Peter Rios.
And you're listening to a special monthly episode of Comic Geek Speak, Book of the Month Club. In this episode, we discuss all about V for Vendetta, and if you have never listened to one of our Book of the Month Club episodes before, it will be absolutely spoiler-filled. And this episode, we're also going to talk about the movie, so if you wanted to see the movie and didn't get to see that either, then you probably shouldn't listen. All right, guys.
V for Vendetta, Alan Moore, David Lloyd, Steve Whitaker, Shobin Dodds,
Siobhan.
Initial thoughts?
It sucked. No, I only said that because the one episode when I said it was a good read, I got jumped. I thought it was pretty good.
Anybody else? Initial thoughts?
I'm going to take a slap because I didn't actually get to finish it this month.
How far did you get?
About almost halfway.
Almost halfway.
Almost halfway, which is 1/4 of the way.
But I loved it.
Jamie's got a hardcover.
The only thing that
Yes, I loved it that much. I have a hardcover.
The only thing that was a little hard is it's not my favorite art as I was going through, and I don't know if that's the trade because some of it comes out really, really dark. But it was okay. I mean, it didn't distract me too much. It just isn't my favorite of stuff I've read, but I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I did see the movie, and I was amazed at how most of the lines from the movie are verbatim from the book, which kind of surprised me. I thought they would have changed a lot more just in speaking, but I've really enjoyed it. I am going to finish it because I want to get to the end.
Damn kids.
The first time I picked this book up was
kids.
The first time I picked this book up was back right after Watchmen came out. This was when DC brought out, to cash in on the Alan Moore bandwagon that Watchmen had produced, and I didn't care for it the first time I read it. I was buying the issues, and I actually had stopped buying the issues because it wasn't my cup of tea. But I knew I wanted to read it, and I was so glad we decided on that this was going to be one of the book of the months. I knew eventually we were going to get around to it. And at Christmas time, I'd actually bought the hardcover as, I always try to give myself one Christmas present. I say this is...
Just one?
Yes, just one. Oh. Because I figure I buy this all through the year, so I designate this as a Christmas present. And I bought the hardcover version of this, and it was sitting there, and then we decided... So I sat down and read it, and I liked it a lot. It was very, very good. I mean, it's really hard to put what this is into words of a couple of sentences because it's such a complex story, so very, very timely, which is what is scary. The fact that he wrote this, he wrote this in the early '80s, and God Almighty, it's as timely today as it was prophetic then, and.
Especially because it was in reaction to what he was going through in his own experience, over in England, and yet it resonates so much with what's going on now with the whole world. So
yeah. But
that's a little freaky. How that's not a big jump to make.
Yeah.
So I will say this continues the string of great books that I've read that Alan Moore has written. There haven't been many that I have not enjoyed, and this one keeps it going.
Kiss your back.
I loved it as well, and I think it's probably now my second or third favorite Alan Moore story. It was that I read it in 2 sittings, and it just God, there was just something in it that just I didn't want to stop reading it because I knew it was going somewhere, and after it was all said and done, I said, wow, this is like. I mean, as much as I love Swamp Thing, I think this might even beat Swamp Thing for me. It was just that good.
I really liked it as well. Every time I would sit down to read a few pages, because those little mini chapters were so short, and I was like, I'll just sit down and read 1 or 2 of those, and I'd end up reading 4 or 5 of them, and so it always compelled me. Although I did have some the ending was good, but not the way I would have liked to see it end. So that kind of had some issues with the ending. But
Which part?
well, the whole thing, you never find out who V is. Like, they kept building it up, and I thought for sure he was going to be some insider guy, you know, some guy who worked for the government or something. You know, you were going to find out there was some secret about him, and then she just goes on into the night to be V, and it's like, well, what happens? Like, I want to know what happens. When's it really end? Like, that's what I want to know. You know.
But that's the whole point of the story. The point of the story was it was an idea, not a person's, and you can't kill an idea.
I know that,
so.
but I want to know what happened to her now. You know, I like endings.
Well, there wasn't any. She became V.
No,
so
that's not the end.
It's only the beginning.
Do the authorities ever find? Do they ever capture her? Does the society ever change? All those kind of things. I want to know. You know, it left me hanging. I got to the end. I was like, oh, this was so good, and now I'm here at the end, and there's not really an end. I was disappointed.
But that's actually one of the things I loved about the ending was the fact that you didn't find out who V was. There wasn't the big reveal. It left it to your imagination exactly who he was. I mean, for me, he was this guy that they experimented on, who actually just learned to fight back, and they couldn't break him with their experimentation. He just kept getting smarter and smarter, and you know, eventually, you know, eventually escaped their prison. It wasn't enough to hold him, and then you know he just was slowly behind, picking each individual person off, and finally taking down, you know, what had held him down.
I'd have to say, it's one thing I was worried about going into the movie, that I thought they're going to do the typical Hollywood thing where you're going to see his face and you don't need to. But just to go along with it, that's why I always thought it was stupid for Captain America to reveal to the world who he is, because the idea of Captain America is supposed to be a symbol. It's not the man behind the mask. It's more of what he stands for, and that's why I liked in V, that you never found out who he was, just because you know it's not important who he is. It's, you know, it's the whole symbol thing, and that's more important than the face behind the mask.
That's what I liked about that. It could be every man behind that mask. It
or a woman.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Everybody has that same ideal. If you're under that kind of oppression, that they want to feel that freedom, and I always took it that she just took up the mantle and went from there.
Do you know when you said you were getting the issues of this, Jamie?
Mm-hmm.
Because he says that there was a jump from when he initially started doing this until 1988 when they actually finished it. And I wondered where in this was that jump? Like,
well, the jump he was talking about was when he brought this out originally in the magazines in England,
mm-hmm.
because you figure it was coming out in the United States from DC in 87, I would think, because that would have been 85 to 86. Was 85 to 86 Watchmen?
Yeah, 86, I think, or right somewhere around there.
Yeah, so I think they wound up finishing it for DC, so DC could finish putting out the whole thing. I could be wrong on that. I'm not taking.
Because he says in the back, he finished it in 88.
Mm-hmm.
So I wondered how much of it did he actually, like, was it just the last couple chapters, or?
I don't know. I'm honestly not sure.
It says here copyright 88, 89 DC Comics,
Mm-hmm.
before it goes into Vertigo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they were bringing that as a monthly title. I know that.
I have to say, the biggest problem I had with the book was you had so many, what I'd call supporting cast people, that at some point sometimes it was hard to see where everybody fit in the whole storyline. That you'd be focusing on something with feet, and all of a sudden it would jump to Almond, I guess it was, and it kind of get a little background on him, and it just seemed a little. I don't see where this is going. And then later you'd have the way they were kind of drawn similarly. It's hard to tell, well, who's who in this, and how's this relevant?
Yeah, those secondary characters, I never knew who the hell was who. Just some of them would get killed, and then others were still alive. And I was like, all right, well, whatever. Those are the guys in charge. That's all. They're anonymous men to me because I could not tell them apart.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem I've had reading it, is that I couldn't tell who these people were apart. I mean, they have the names, but they all look so darn alike.
And then all of a sudden there was that guy, and his wife was a crazy, powerful bitch, and was like, okay, like.
Well, they didn't introduce her, but it was kind of, she was almost a peripheral character when they first introduced her. I swear for three chapters I thought I was following Creedy, and I was following another guy, and until they finally said his name, I was like, oh crap, I thought that was Creedy. Oh man.
Yeah.
But again, that exactly what you said, Matt. That was my one drawback to this. I really thought that even had they, at the beginning of this, given me a character, a list of characters and who they were and stuff like that, or somehow just make mention of characters and where they fit in, I was having a little bit of trouble with that myself. And I will admit, if you read, I don't know if in the softcover they had it, but in the hardcover, they talked to Alan Moore a little bit about this, and he says about how it was. He finds the first couple issues very tough. He and David Lloyd were finding their legs, and I think he said by like issue 3, it finally started flowing, and I could really tell it that like the first couple issues I thought were very, very tough reads, and by 3, that's when I really kind of got into the flow of it, and it kind of made a little more sense.
At the end of book 1, there's that musical page, the prelude. I wonder if anybody's ever played that music, if it actually is something.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Like, I'm just curious what it actually would turn out to be. Because I mean, I could read it, and in my head, I could like sing a tune to it, and I know it's not the correct one, but it all kind of metered out that it should be a good song, but I couldn't. I can't read music, so I don't even know how to judge that.
What I was amazed about this, in terms of the writing of it, and I guess I was more forgiving about some of the of what he said, although I didn't really have a problem with it, was that this was so early in his career that for him to produce this, I thought was just amazing. And after I read this, I went, if he wouldn't have written this, if V for Vendetta never existed, I don't know if we would ever have gotten Watchmen, because there were some interesting parallels and interesting ideas in this that I thought he then further played on in Watchmen, especially because the V for Vendetta character reminds me a lot of Rorschach, and the symbolism in, and this might be David Lloyd more than Alan Moore, but the symbolism in the covers, which they show in the back, they're very angular. The covers are angular. They all look like they have V's in them somewhere if you really look at the design element of it. And there was a lot of with Dave Gibbons in Watchmen, there were a lot of panels that there were, if you really looked at them and studied them, you could see how they were relating to the story. Excuse me. And when I read this, I was like, wow, he really, as great as this is the thing that I don't know. It must have solidified some thoughts that he had in his head about Watchmen, because it's such a powerful story on its own, and yet it resonates through some of his other works now that I've read it, since it is one of his earliest works.
I have to say, so we can get flagged by the government, do you agree with V in this, that he was using one man's terrorist, another man's freedom fighter tactics to try to get people to wake up and look at the vacuum we're living in? We need to kind of take more control and not so much let the government be the dictator that it's become.
It's an interesting thing because the Norse Fire government in this, it's obvious that the people know that they're living under an authoritarian rule or totalitarian or whatever. Like the one scene where the little girl, where the cameras go out and she says bollocks to the camera and she ducks because she thinks something's going to happen to her. And then she goes back and nothing happens to her. So if you're living in that much fear that one word could send down hellfire and damnation, the whole country must know that they are living under, and they just accept it. So you can certainly make parallels to today's climate, but we can go out and say fuck, and nobody's going to rain down on us. Police aren't going to come out and beat us over the head. So there's a different sense of terror, I think, in this, and when you talk about V as an anarchist and the hero of the book, quote unquote, just like in the movie, and I don't want to get into the movie just yet, but where they keep saying terrorist, the word terrorist. He is a terrorist. I mean, he basically is what he is. But in this world that people have lived, the world where these people live in fear most of the time, it's almost easier to say, okay, I can see why he's doing this, you know.
Well, you're not. He's not a. In my eyes, he's not a terrorist. He's the savior. And you have to kill a few things. No freedoms ever came cheap usually. And
right.
When it's like if the Germans had risen against the Nazis, which is I think what this is similar to, is you wouldn't shed a tear over the blowing up of some building in Berlin. You'd applaud that. And so that's the way I look at it.
I think the gray area is when you start to include, and it's funny, when I was thinking about this, I went back to that whole thing in Clerks where they talk about the blowing up of the space station and all that. Yeah, because as much as he's getting rid of the body and the hand and the eye and all those, there's still quote unquote innocence in some of the buildings that he's blown up in that one chapter where he's conducting the whole so there are, when you start thinking of it like that, and of course he's obviously the central figure of this book, and if you read comics, it's usually good versus evil, so you get that. But then when you really, I've seen arguments where people are like, well, he's still a terrorist though. He's still a madman himself, if you even want to go that far. And do you agree with it or disagree with it? I don't think I even got that close. It was more about just understanding why he's doing it and understanding the idea behind him. That obviously you can understand. It's just how do you go about it? And I think that's what Alan Moore is bringing up. How far would a man go, or how far would you go? And because Evie doesn't go that way. she says, I'm not a killer, and she takes the role of V, and even says, I'm going to help them. I'm going to help build them up, and I'm going to build up the. Did she say build them up or build the city up or something like that? So she doesn't even go that route.
I kind of have to disagree. To me, the central character in this whole book was Evie, because to me, this story is kind of being seen mostly through her eyes. Because if it was through V's eyes, I think it would be a little bit different. For some reason, just when I was reading this, because it seems as though you start off with Evie, you end with Evie, and there's a lot of her backstory and her progress into why she became V. Not so much of why his is pretty much, in a way, cut and dry.
Yeah, where he is.
Yeah, so that's why when I was reading this, I was thinking more of, I'm seeing it through her eyes as opposed to his, because a lot of this stuff, it's hard to understand. I think if you're reading it through V's eyes, all the stuff you're reading it flows nice and simply. If you're reading it through her eyes, where she's kind of in the dark through most of this until closer and closer to the end, that's why there's a lot of confusion in the book, and that's why the first 50 pages or so are difficult to read, because you're coming into something you're not quite understanding, and you're learning it as Evie's learning it as well.
Yeah, the central character, I didn't mean... I meant he's the one that is the force behind... Yeah, the book is behind. Actually, if you want to go even further, I think Finch is really the main character in the book, because he's the one that has the journey that both of them characters have, because he goes to Lark Hill, and he has the same experiences as V has, and he has an understanding that he thinks that V might have gone through, same thing that Evie eventually does too. And the book ends with him, and he's leaving, which I thought was very interesting. Like, you talk about an ending, when Brian talked about an ending, here's a guy that maybe does see where V is coming from in his anarchy kind of view, and decides, and a lot of forum members, I think some forum members even mention this too, he decides to be his own self, get away from the city, away from everybody. He's going to shun it all, and that's almost like a pure idea of what anarchy really is.
Wasn't there that one scene where he gets a letter saying he's been denied retirement, and he puts his head down all depressed, like, oh, I got to keep doing it again, like that. To me, that shows just how much he doesn't want to be a part of that system anymore. And I guess he never realized it until all of this happened at the end of the journey. It's like, oh, I don't have to be anymore.
I mean, from one of the earliest scenes where the leader says England prevails, and he kind of hesitates and says, I was like, oh, okay, this is obviously the character to watch in this book.
What was the whole business with him where he's suddenly taking acid and he's walking around the thing?
He's trying to understand V.
Totally missed that, but why would he take acid to do that?
Because he knew they were experimenting on them with psychotropic drugs and such.
When did we learn that?
When you were reading it.
When you were reading the doctor's diary.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I don't remember.
Yeah, they had that was the whole part of experimentation. At least that's what I thought that they were doing at that place was, psychotropic drugs and stuff like that. They changed it around for the movie. The movie is a whole different thing that they put towards it, but that's what and that was the reason I felt that he took those, so he could totally understand exactly where V was coming from, what they had done to him, and whatever feelings he had, and behind what he did. I kind of think V was just such a master manipulator that, when you say Evie was a central character, that was what he knew what the end game was going to be. He knew what he wanted to do. He knew what he had to do. He knew he wasn't getting out alive. So he had to produce someone...
A legacy?
Someone who would keep the idea going. And he did, any means necessary he took to make sure that Evie was no longer afraid, knew what, because... she was on the borderline, but she, like Peter said, she wouldn't kill. But even though at the end, she still said she wouldn't, and she's going to take it a different way. He still secured the fact that there would be that idea of V, the idea of freedom, would prevail. So that's that was one of the things I got, that he was just such a master manipulator.
And he still made her kill because he got her to start to train, and whether she wanted to or not.
I don't think anybody was in there, though.
You can't tell me that there was not a single person in the entire House of Parliament when that train went
up? No, they didn't use Parliament anymore. That was the whole thing. They were blowing up a building.
Yeah, but there wouldn't have been like some night watchman or something?
Well, yeah, unfortunately.
That's what I mean. I mean, right. I'm certain there had to be one person in there. Even some homeless guy squatting.
But actually,
is this the movie reference that we're talking about?
In the book is 21 Downing Street. Is where they blow, is who they send the train to blow up at the end. Because he blows up Parliament
in the beginning.
Right. No. Well, whatever building he blows up in the book, she says she doesn't want to kill, but then she blows up a building. And when a building blows up, there's got to be at least one guy walking across the street. That's what I mean. So he made her a killer, even though she didn't want to.
To me, going back to the terrorist, and I didn't get a chance to voice in on this, I never felt... To me, a terrorist takes innocent lives. And to get there... A terrorist doesn't care who they kill... to get their point across, and that's just my, the Jamie D'Alessandro interpretation of what a terrorist is. To me, V was like, again, an idea. He took out the people. Anybody he killed really were bad people. Even if with the doctor, that was the one where he killed the doctor. I was like, she kind of had repented and she knew what she had done was wrong, and that was like the least violent death he gave her. He gave her a poison that would just kill her. She just stopped breathing, and he gave her a humane death because he realized that she had repented. But all the rest of them, none of them had repented. And if you say, well, he killed soldiers and he killed the policemen, and we're going to I'm bouncing between the book and the movie. Yeah, but he killed people that were fighting for the idea that he was fighting against. It wasn't like he blew up a building full of people, just a random building full of people. He didn't kill. You never saw him kill, and that's what I can't put a terrorist on him. But that's what, again, the government was labeling him a terrorist, and that's when you have to stop and think, who are they labeling terrorists, and are they really terrorists? And I'm not saying anybody. I'm not. Please, no letters saying I'm defending any terrorism in the world right now, because I believe anybody we have labeled terrorists are terrorists right now. What they did was inexcusable as far as I'm concerned. But as far as the book goes, I can't label him a terrorist. He's more of a freedom fighter and more of an idealist who is trying to push. Trying to just wake up the country, because he knows the country is going in the wrong way, and to do it, he did what he had to do.
I think the thing of it is that no terrorist is obviously going to call themselves a terrorist. Like, the word terrorist is coming from, like you said, the government, or it's coming from the outside in. So no matter whatever crazy act they either in this book or in the real world, obviously no terrorist is ever going to say, I'm a terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
So in his mind, he flat out says it. I'm an anarchist. And in one of the scenes. So and in the movie they say the word constantly. Even I think more than the book, the word is like smacked in your face. And
That's
But-
because it's a buzzword now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually what I thought while I was listening to it. I was like, okay, they're doing this for obvious reasons. But I just looked over that scene where he's conducting the explosions of those buildings, and the one character says that somebody was working late. But I'd have to read it again and see was he as selective in his killing, especially in the bigger explosions and stuff like that. But it's also a different world, like where obviously we know that this people, they came in and swooped in under this war and then took over, and there's rationing and even suggestions of controlling of the weather and things like that. So yeah, I mean it's a whole entire.
Well, when you think about it, when he blew up Parliament in the beginning, did he do it noon during the day when probably a lot of people would be in the building? No, he did it at more or less midnight when maybe there's a few watchmen in there or whatever, but it's not going to be as many people in the building at the time. So going with Jamie's definition, which I think of a terrorist, which I think is pretty reasonable, it's also was he going for the innocent lives, or was he just going to the people that were?
He definitely had an agenda. Oh yeah.
So picking his time of day, of night, or whatever however you want to put it, of when to blow up and destroy those buildings is also goes along with that he wasn't looking to take out innocent people. He was just the buildings were supposed to go because they're a symbol of something, and do it when hardly anybody's going to be there, so that the body count would be low.
He does have he's not as
benevolent.
I was going to say moral, but I don't know if that's the right word, because he does offer Evie the choice of going to kill the guy that killed the guy she was living with, Gordon. Where they're out in the garden, he says all you have to do is pick that rose, and that the killer that killed your lover, I will kill. So when you take matters into your own hands like that, justice in your own hands like that, that's borderline. You're going now into being a vigilante. So because you're going outside the law. But he's not worried. He would kill. He has no qualms about killing. So
but that person's not innocent.
He's not innocent, but it's not V's call to
no. But
to
in a world where there is no fair system of justice, if that guy's a government employee who killed this guy or whatever.
I thought it was just a thug.
No, I thought it was a member of the Finger.
No,
that he was causing some problems.
No, because that guy stabs him through the door with the sword. It's just it's the Scottish guy, and he has a guy with him. I just took him as thugs.
That's that guy. Well, but he is working for the government.
The Harry Osborn looking guy.
He's working for that guy's
this
wife.
Government needs
not at
name
that
tags
point,
on
though,
their people.
Not at that point?
No.
Yeah, name tags.
It's page 131 where he's chasing him. And
well, what about all the people that V killed that were at the containment camp?
But didn't somebody send him to kill him? Why would
No, there was the whole thing about the shipment about drugs or guns or something like that.
But why would they come to his house then?
Because they were chasing him into his house, and he ran into his house.
I think he's looking for a reason of why they were chasing him into his house.
Something about the booze. There was like let's see. He says here, "I'll take more than bastard." I'd have to read it again, but I mean, at that point, he's not. Creedy doesn't hire that Scottish guy until all hell starts to break loose, and then he brings him into the Finger. At that point, he's just a thug.
But I could have sworn he was still a member of the government.
No, that comes later. And he's not even officially into the government. Creedy just says, "Hey, I want to hire you and your men because some stuff's going to come up, and I need extra men, and we can't take care of all this chaos because all the cameras are out and all that." That's when he actually starts to hire him.
Well, either way, I don't get any sympathy for that.
I found it hard to read some of the UK slang or maybe it's Scottish, whatever. It was just
The Scottish guy.
It was thick. Huh?
yeah. Just reading this, I'm like, this isn't making sense to me.
You have to do the Scottish accent in your head, and it helps a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But there were still some parts where I'm
I
like,
kept thinking Scrooge McDuck here doesn't talk this bad.
Did you
I wonder I could understand Braveheart.
when Evie gets not terrorized, when Evie gets put away, and did everybody know that was V, or did you know it was just?
I suspected it was him, but
Shane didn't get that far yet.
but even in the movie, I mean, I know the story before I read it. I knew what happened basically, but even in the movie, at first I didn't think it was him, but when he wore the gloves, because there was that one time where it looked like the one head guy, like the second in command, Creedy. It looked like him in the movie, and I thought, well, maybe it's really not, and he's just going to bust Evie out at some point. And then towards the end of that, when he actually had the gloves on, I thought, no, that's him, and that's how it progressed and turned out. But no, I wasn't sure at first. I had an idea, but there was so much against it that I didn't think it was.
I kind of figured the way she was abducted, it just seemed kind of very V-esque. That's not even a word, but like the way he operates, just coming out of the shadows and grabbing somebody, even though he wasn't in his V outfit, it still was kind of like, that seems something that V would do. Just made me like, it's probably just a setup.
I thought that was the again, you read these stories and you start to go, wow, there's so many elements in storytelling that exist even before the stories we read. I mean, there are hardly ever new ideas, but it's just the way you present them, because it feels very Matrixy, that whole scene about what we're used to since, I'm used to, because I saw Matrix first before I read this, the whole releasing Evie, and there's elements of that in Invisibles as well, and then to read it even this farther back, and it makes me wonder, how much farther you're going to go back. Obviously, you can go into psychology and all that crap, but it was such a powerful scene that...
Way to shit on some people's profession.
That's all right. Sorry.
Send your emails
All
to
you psychos out there, send your letters to...
It was so powerful, but and I guess this is when, even though I missed the whole twist in Unthinkable, the movie Unthinkable at the end there, but this one I kind of, as soon as I saw it, I went Unbreakable, Unthinkable.
Jeez.
like, what the hell movie is that?
Yeah.
This one as soon as the scene started happening, I went, oh, okay, this is V. This is V getting her back and trying to work her over, and so it was, but it still was very enjoyable. I'm not pointing this out because it's a criticism. I'm just wondering how that scene played out for other people.
Here's a comment from Darth Kramer on the forum. At the beginning of the story, we have V as a lone dissenter in a totalitarian government. He has fresh ideas and seems to be acting for himself by taking out those who have wronged him in the past. It's important to note that V doesn't look at himself as a hero, he looks at himself as a villain, and even the devil himself. Evie looks upon V as a great individual and even falls for him a little bit. When we learn V's backstory, we learn that the people he's targeting have all since moved on to high-ranking government positions, so maybe V's personal vendetta isn't as personal as it seems to be. In the second part of the book, V is teaching Evie to be an individual by tormenting and torturing her. He opens her mind by putting her through the same hell he went through, by isolating her and taking away everything that she knows. And finally, when she's faced with the decision that she can either sell V out or die for her ideology, and she chooses the ideology, that's where she's free. But that's also where the line between individuality and the ideology is crossed. In the final act, V is shown to be what he really is, a figurehead for an ideology. After Evie spends the time in the Shadow Gallery reading and listening to music, she absorbs everything that V has absorbed. Then when V starts to talk to her, she realizes that he's full of shit. He doesn't have any individual ideas himself. He's basically just regurgitating everything from old philosophy to Rolling Stones and Velvet Underground lyrics. Realizing that V is just a man then, V must die and become a martyr for his ideology to finally reach a broader base. When the government puts out the message that V has been killed, it's then that Evie must take up the mantle of V to show that the idea cannot be killed. It's important to note that the public then takes on V's ideology more and more once the government stops observing them, as the former nameless masses begin to take on individual actions. On a contrary note, I think that in a different situation, V would have acted as a totalitarian. It's just part of his anarchistic nature and further illustrates why he is not a hero. All right.
Oh, you missed the bottom part. It says, "Long live George Bush."
No, it doesn't.
This is here's another comment from the forum from Bulwark. Talks about the ending that Brian mentioned and I talked about. In my personal interpretation, the last 2 pages reveal just how hollow and bitter the future is still going to be. Once you look past the grand principles of the Shadow Gallery, you run right into the real shadows, the real darkness and chaos that's going to swallow the country, including new struggles to raise armies. After all, the V followers are just another armed mob. That's why Detective Finch's stories through the book is so important. He walks V's steps, relives the hell, but rather than getting caught in a man vendetta, he pursues the true anarchic ideal. Yeah, leaving behind society to find his own way as a man in the final panel.
So what do we think of the movie?
Natalie Portman was hot.
Jesus.
It's
And
too
that's-
bad when she, like in the book, she didn't stand naked in the
Yes,
rain.
yes, I
instead of
was
just,
gonna-
standing in the rain.
Well, see, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because everybody's making a big fucking deal about her shaving her head, and I'm like, you know what? Bullshit. Because stand her ass out in the rain, even if you don't see her naked, but you see her back, then I will say she took a chance. Oh, I cut my hair. Big fucking deal. Shut up. Ah, it's so.
She reminds me of a young Sigourney Weaver
No, she doesn't.
from Aliens 3.
Oh, please.
No, I gotta tell you, Peter, if you didn't think she was hot in that baby doll outfit, there's something wrong with you.
No, see, this is again. That baby doll outfit was ridiculous. It was meant to be ridiculous. It was meant to
I
be.
don't care.
And what you may say, whatever you think it is, I call taste because I'm sorry. It just she does nothing for me. And if that's the only thing you focus on the movie, get out.
But did you like her in the role at all?
No.
Really?
No, I didn't.
Jeez.
No.
I thought her accent came and went a little bit at times.
Yeah. Very much. Very much. Wait, but I don't want to talk about the movie. Like, let's talk about the movie, but not the movie versus the book, because that's a whole different thing, I think. So.
Well, are we going to talk about that?
Yeah, we will later. But because I was ready to jump on the whole movie versus the book.
Because
I'd rather wait
I
on
can't. I honestly can't. Okay, I guess.
Way
I
to
guess
steer
I
the
can.
ship there, Gilligan.
Yeah, because
that. You have to though, because otherwise it's going to get to.
and to me that's the whole thing. That it was, on its own. I don't know what the hell I'm saying now.
Tasha,
Because it's tough. It's just for me tough not to compare the two. But
Right.
Go ahead. Let us-
Tasha
Tasha
didn't
said
read the
she
book,
liked.
right?
She didn't read the book, but she said she really liked the movie. So
I like the movie.
I haven't heard anything bad about anybody that's seen the movie, and even now, of course, most people I've talked to have read the book. So so to me that's almost the ultimate compliment. If you read the book and you can sit there and say you liked the movie, and I'm one of those people that can sit here and say I've done both, and I do like the movie. I think that's a compliment.
Well, I think it's also impressive that was the #1 movie that week. I would have never thought that movie to be that popular coming like that. Especially, I don't know, maybe they didn't promote it as a comic book movie as much as I thought they did, but knowing that it was a comic book, I just assumed.
No, because they didn't. All it was from the makers of from the creators of Matrix.
Chelsea Brothers.
And it really didn't even.
Maybe, okay.
Unless you knew, it didn't come across as it was a graphic novel or a comic book or whatever you want, however you want to say.
Well, and I actually didn't know that it was by the Wachowski brothers until I sat down and saw the
think they
movie
just
and the
produced
credits.
it.
Yeah.
But I still didn't know that.
You
And
could tell by the scenes in the fight.
No. What I'm saying is I didn't hear that in the promotions.
They didn't direct it.
No.
It was produced by them. And It
Yeah.
was directed by another guy altogether.
But I mean, I think now knowing that, I think that would have drawn all the Matrix people in.
yeah,
to
I mean,
see it.
To me, other than the fight scene at the end between V and those soldiers,
Yeah.
I didn't really see much of the Matrix. The whole
Style.
No,
and
never.
and the camera angles. I thought it was pretty.
Slow motion and all that.
I thought it was directed very well. I mean, I thought he kept the action moving. I thought the story kept moving. I thought they did great in what they had to get into 2.5 or 2 hours and 15 minutes. I thought they did a great job. Same way, reading Lord of the Rings and watching the Lord of the Rings movies, there was stuff they had to cut out, but your basic storyline was still there. So I loved it. I thought it was a good movie.
I liked it enough to see it 3 times.
You saw it a third time too?
No, I saw it before I went with Jamie and Shane.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
jeez.
And then you asked if I went to go, so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go see it a third time.
I too. I thought the fight scenes were very well choreographed and directed. They were very effective in not being overdone.
Hugo Weaving I thought was great. I mean, to me,
He was fantastic.
Now, wasn't some
I
of
don't
those
even.
scenes?
I can't. Who was he in the movie?
He was V.
He was V.
He was V.
He
Well,
was
how
the
would you know
voice
that?
of V.
Because he doesn't take his mask off.
Yeah, but
Well,
he-
actually,
Yeah, but I recognize his voice.
yeah.
I
Wait,
didn't.
wait,
at
and
all.
you know what? I have to say, when I found out, I saw the name, it didn't register who he was, and that's how I wanted to go into the movie. And then I opened up my mouth, and Jamie says, "Well, don't you remember he was in Lord of the Rings?"
Mhm.
And in The Matrix, I was like, "Well, now I can put a face to the guy behind the mask." But I kind of just went to go in there not picturing who the actor was until after I had seen
Yeah,
it.
no, I didn't watch the credits, I guess, or anything. I had no idea.
But,
There was
but
actually another
Jamie
guy before
spoiler
him.
over there decided to ruin it for me.
Hey,
No, I'm just kidding.
There was another guy that was actually in that role before Hugo Weaving.
Well, that's what I
And
wanted to
they-
ask. Didn't they shoot some of the scenes
Yeah,
already? So I
yep.
want to know did they keep that footage in the movie?
It's funny.
Why would it matter?
Yeah, that's,
Well, it doesn't
that's
matter,
actually
I
what
was just
it's actually what I wondered. I wondered if it didn't matter because
the guy it was
James
the
Purefoy.
guy from Rome, the Rome series who played Mark Anthony.
Oh yeah.
He was the guy who was supposed to be originally do.
Really? I mean, it could be me. It doesn't matter as long
but
as
I still
voice
thought it was
guy.
it was a great performance that he got out of just using his voice and his actions. It was almost
it was
like
weird.
a ballet that he did, like a dance that he did, and for some actors they'd fall flat on their face. But I thought this guy just did such a great job. He had me hooked in from the very beginning, and in another actor's hands, it would have been bad.
It kind of threw me off there a little bit when you're just seeing the same face with a smile, but all these hand gestures while he was like getting, well, like his octaves would go up while he was giving a speech kind of thing. It was just like, when you're used to seeing somebody's mouth move when they're talking, just to see the same thing just kind of threw me off a little bit.
It's hard to get that sense of theatricality across on a flat screen movie, So, but here's a from MovieWeb.com. They ask Joel Silver, one of the producers, is any of James Purefoy, who was the original V actor, still in the movie as V for Vendetta? You would never be able to tell if it was him or Hugo Weaving behind the mask. And Joel Silver says, this is his response, which I thought was kind of interesting. A lot of people played V. There are stunt scenes and knife scenes and wire work. There are a lot of people behind the mask. So he doesn't answer the question. And then
because he doesn't want to pay him.
no, he did get paid.
Okay.
James Purefoy did get paid. And then from superherohype.com, they ask James Mateague, the director, what about the change in actor who played V? Did you end up keeping any of the scenes shot with James Purefoy behind the mask? And he says, I did a bit of reshooting, but the thing with James is that you spend 20 years or more learning how to use your face. That's your ultimate tool as an actor, and then when that's taken away from you, and you're put in something that can be very confining or very limiting, we just made a decision because it wasn't working out.
So he was fired, or he?
Well, he said he left. He said he left by mutual consent, and he even says, he goes on to this whole thing where he's like, he fell asleep one time and the damn mask was still on his face, and he said it was too constricting for him, so he wasn't getting. He felt it wasn't working. So even the director doesn't really go about answering the question of he says I did a bit of reshooting. It makes you wonder, because James Purefoy seems to suggest that he was in the movie was halfway done before he was replaced. So I don't know what that means. Does that mean halfway of his stuff, halfway of the movies, half of the pre-editing?
They shot
stuff?
all the other scenes before they started his.
Right. Because that was my first impression too, and I remember saying something to Jamie about that. That really could have been anybody behind that mask, as long as it's the whole Darth Vader thing. You get James Earl Jones to do the voice, and you don't care who's behind it. But
and David Prowse has to do all the hand gestures.
Yeah. Because there were some scenes that I thought it was very still watching it. When you're like what Matt's talking about, when you're watching this masked character, and you're like, oh God, if he doesn't do something soon, I'm going to scream. You know what I mean? Like, it just do something. You want a little more emoting out of it. And it's funny because the book, because of the shadow work and because of David Lloyd's artwork, which I thought was just absolutely fantastic. The mask does change. There are some scenes where if you're reading up to it and then there's just a shot of his face, you get a whole new vision of what the mask looks like. So when I was watching the movie, there was one or two parts that it got a little. I could see where the actor would feel claustrophobic.
And also in the book, he used a couple different masks too. There was like the Punch and Judy mask that he had on when he was
During
like the
the
carnival
interrogation.
barker,
Yeah.
and so he did use a couple different theatrical masks.
Well, even in the movie, he had that alternate persona. That I want to say Woodward, but it doesn't sound right.
Yeah, that when he went to meet Finch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
When he went to meet the...
when they met the guy with the beard and the glasses, and Finch
still had
realized
the
St. Mary's
trench coat.
Memorial
Right.
there was no such guy, or the guy was dead.
for 20 years.
I love the scene, the whole where he's building the domino thing, and they're setting up for the whole big third act and all that. And I thought there were I thought they captured that sense of you questioning yourself and your role in society or whatever you want to say. Like it did bring that out in me at that point. I was like, wow, this is really stirring, and this is really. Look at that imagery, the whole knocking down the domino thing with the V, and you knew something was going to happen. If you didn't know the book ahead of time, you knew that was a great turning point in the movie. I thought they captured that very well. I thought they captured some of that spirit very well of his ideal, his message.
I liked how when you saw him emerge from room 5, that when he came out into the dark and you could see his body was all badly burned. I mean, that image, it was, and then you heard the roar when he was yelling. To me, that just looked so unbelievably great. It was unbelievable. Well, that's too many unbelievables, but
It was unbelievable. How unbelievable it was! Unbelievable.
I'm like Mike Tyson now all of a sudden. No, I just thought that image and the way they did it was brilliant. It was perfect.
Did the fight scene at the end do anything for anybody?
I thought it was neat.
I liked it. I mean...
Was it necessary? I guess that's my point.
I thought it was stupid.
Did you? Okay. Did you? Go ahead. Say why.
Well, I again, I don't know if I'm seeing it through the eyes of the book or not, but it just seemed like, in the book, they made a point of, over the course of the book, of telling you, of having the police talk about how amazing of a killer he was, how fast and like invisible and just it was almost superhero-ish or whatever, and they told you that. In the movie, the cops never really discussed that or anything. He killed some people. It seemed like he killed fewer people in the movie than he did in the book up to that point or whatever. And then all of a sudden there's this big showdown, and and it's like, I don't know, it seemed very forced. It seemed like they got to the end and went, man, we need an action scene. We haven't had one yet. This guy, we marketed this movie as an action movie, and now we got to deliver. Okay, Joe Silver says, let's pull a Matrix here. That's what because he was the producer of the Matrix, and it just, because then it was like, okay, I mean, I know he's wearing that armor and stuff, but I mean, they shot like 6,000 bullets at him. I mean, what the hell?
Well, I'll agree that if he got hit with 6,000 bullets, I don't know if that little suit of armor would have stopped everything like that. But, excuse me, to me, it didn't bother me that much in that way, because I thought that they were just trying to show you how methodical he was at killing everybody. And the only way to do that and make you understand just what he's going through is he goes to each person and stops them, because he knew that all their bullets were out, and he knew what time it would take them approximately to load their bullets again before he had enough time to go around to them all. Like, it was just showing the audience how he was doing it. I didn't find it overly done as far as an action thing, because I thought all the action through the movie was fine. So it didn't seem like that much of a stretch for me to watch it.
I don't know, something about it bothered me. I just thought it was very out of place.
If I didn't read the book, I would think it would be great. But having read the book, that definitely does take that scene, and you kind of question, typical Hollywood malarkey.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if we want to start going into comparing the book and the movie, because I think
can we, Peter?
Because this was my big thing, comparing the book to the movie. Having read the book, he's such a master manipulator behind the scenes, and I felt he manipulated so many people into doing things to do his work, that it was just such a difference to have him actually doing all this killing. He was not, and to me that was the whole thing, he was more of I'm 100 yards away, I blow you up type guy, rather than I'm going to stick knives in you and kill you. He did that when he had to. But I agree, it was like Brian said, it was one of those where they got to the point in the book where, okay, well, we have to kill him, and if we're not going to have Finch do the job as they did it in the book, then how do we set it up? And I was going to say, one of the things I was going to say was, I love the supporting cast. I thought Stephen Ray did a great job as Finch. Everybody knows who's been listening. I'm a huge Stephen Fry fan, so I loved his little bit.
Who's he?
He was the gay
Gordon.
Oh,
Gordon.
right, okay.
Having John Hurt was inspired casting as
John Hurt was inspired casting, but he just didn't do enough for me, and that was what I was going to say. I wish they would have gone into his character a little more as they did in the book. Just giving him a little more to do other than the giant head ranting at somebody, do this, do that, do this, do that.
Well, they did in that whole Benny Hill bit.
Well, that
Yeah,
was
it was
funny.
funny.
That was funny.
It was funny, but it wasn't.
And I will say I agree with Jamie about that. From seeing the previews and then reading as much of the book as I have, I thought that he should have had a bigger role in the movie. I was a little disappointed that it was just the big giant head yelling at everybody.
That whole big giant head pissed me off, but that's a whole nother story.
What was he? He was in 1984. Was that the movie? John Hurt was in.
Yeah, he was in 1984.
It just went as soon as I saw him, I went, "Of course, John Hurt. Of course, they're gonna make him be the guy." You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, going back to the whole fight scene at the end, it was. I agree with Brian. It just seemed to be out of place, and it just was their way of, again, just sticking a huge fight scene into it when they didn't really need to.
If we're comparing now, if we
No, wait. I want to read some things
Okay.
from the forum first.
I'll be interested to see how I read through that at the end, see what I think of
Are
it
you
after
kidding?
the fact.
Shane,
Well,
you're
plus,
not gonna
like,
get to it.
the thing, too, is, like,
Well,
they
yes,
always
I
seem
will.
to up the ante with the special effects, like, from Matrix and Matrix 2 and then the other one. And then I was like, well, why is this... Where's the new level of special effects with this,
But I don't think that's what they
There
were
were none.
going for in this.
No, but... didn't you expect that when you were watching the three Matrix movies? Like, the first Matrix movie blows your mind. And then didn't they say something about the third one was going to have, like, some new thing that they were...
The second one did.
The second one,
Yeah.
okay. So, when I saw this one, not that they said anything about it, but I just assumed, because of...
No, I didn't
No.
anticipate
No.
that.
No, and after watching the third Matrix movie, I thought no wonder they filmed both of them together because there was hardly anything in that third one.
Because just watching the knife and seeing the patterns I was just like, that's not enough for me. Oh, well.
So the music was pretty good at that. That kind of got you. To me, the background music is what was happening with the people kind of donning the V masks and approaching Parliament. With the music at the same time, you're also seeing the fight scene. It switched back and forth. That kind of got me into the scene a little bit more. So even though I don't agree with why they put it in there, it still got me into it. I was like, oh yeah, some ass kicking's going to go on now.
Yeah. I like on the forum, we have a first-time poster to the forum about V for Vendetta. I like that when people come out of something catches them and it makes them come out of the woodwork. This is from Jay Eisen, excuse me. Hey, long-time listener, first-time poster. God, that sounded lame. But I needed a place to talk about this movie, and I figured this would be a good bet. I am so going to be flamed for this. I went to see the movie in its first showing. I've read the book a few times and loved it. I went with a friend who did not know what the story was about beyond the very basics. We both absolutely loved the film to the point where I think I'm going to go back with friends next week. He gives it a 10 out of 10. So did his friend, who was female, who bought the book the next day. I intentionally didn't read the books for a few months before the movie came out, so I wouldn't be trying to compare it directly. I went back and reread it again, and at first thought, wow, the movie really complements the book. There are things that work so much better in the movie and things that work better in the book, but by the end I came to a personal conclusion. Here we go. I like the movie better than the book. Let me see. There was something in here that he goes, I think what the movie managed to do was take the graphic novel, take all the themes Moore was trying to get across, give it a little bit of a movie polish, but managed to do it without violating the story, the ideas, or the characters. I was going over my head what I felt let down by, and honestly, I couldn't really think of anything serious. I was excited to see how the movie would handle the scene where she debates taking off the mask, and was slightly disappointed that it was just glossed over. And then the crowd of V's take off their masks. Beautiful storytelling. He really liked the movie over the book. Nicholas Danger, he has a movie review. He said the film was good but not great, and quite frankly not V for Vendetta the book at all. What was good? Hugo Weaving. Wow, the man just is V. The torture scenes with Evie were nope perfect. John Hurt as the Chancellor was suitably full of fire and brimstone and fascism. The movie had its heart in the right place. What wasn't so good? Natalie Portman's accent. Sorry, baby, I still love you, though. Pacing was a bit disjointed, I think would be the appropriate word. I see. Pacing was a bit disjointed. Some of the changes made seemed arbitrary and clumsy in comparison to the book. Switching, let's see. Overall, good popcorn picture with some ideas behind it, which these days is unusual in and of itself. I'd say 3 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Just trying to get some movie comments here. Paul French of Poptopia says, I really enjoyed the movie, and to be fair, it's been probably 15 years since I read the book, and my memories were vague. That said, I can't wait to read it again. The many V's at the end was, I thought, very powerful in that V was everyone, and let's face it, the visual of the sea of V's was really stunning. As for Evie being an office worker instead of a hooker, I thought it made her journey all the more powerful. It certainly made her character more identifiable. I think it's quite a journey to go from retrieving espressos and lattes to setting an explosive subway train in motion. Again, she could be any of us. I'll probably feel differently by the weekend after I've read the book again, but for now, I didn't mind the changes and really love the movie.
Can I just read something, because you just read that? This is from David Monteith. He's Rogue Spirit on the forum. He says, not a bad film at all, but it's a better book. Here are some changes between the two that I think damage the film. And the first thing he says was, Evie being upgraded from pathetic teenage prostitute. For me, this didn't work because she didn't have enough of a journey. In the book, she is a lost and desperate figure that goes through so much, is liberated mentally, and takes on a bigger destiny. In the film, she starts as a fairly spunky girl, and then progresses into a fairly spunky girl that's been tortured that likes to watch fireworks from the roof with a terminally confused policeman. And I think I would agree with him that...
And Paul's response was after that, so just so we know what order that was.
Oh, really? He posted this on the forum?
So, yeah, Rogue Spirit is first. He says that first, and then Paul responded after that.
Interesting, because I would agree with Rogue Spirit. I mean, going from prostitute...
So do I.
You know, which is... You know, especially when she's the kind of prostitute where she's just clearly desperate. You know, she's not like one of these old pros who's wizened up to the ways of the underbelly of society. She's like, really like, you know...
She's going into prostitution,
right.
I should say, yeah.
No, but that's what I mean, but she's now so desperate that she just this is the only thing she can think to do, and she's at the lowest of the low there, you know, as opposed to...
So we're now comparing the book and movie, Matt.
Okay, thanks. But I have to say... That would have to be... That's one of the biggest problems I had with the movie is, for me, her in the movie, I don't see her justified in her decision when you're reading the book, because I think that they cut without her being a prostitute, without her, like you said, being so desperate I have to prostitute myself, and then also the fact that I really missed that where she thought V could have been her father. I thought that was another important part of her journey, and where he basically said, no, I'm not, and then kicked her out of the shadow gallery. And then where she fell in love with somebody that got killed, and then tried to take revenge out herself. And those parts being taken out of the movie, I think the torture scene is very critical into her journey. But I think there's a lot of things that led up to that torture scene that was taken out, and it shouldn't have been, because in the book where she decides to be V, I think you would kind of lose that if you didn't have those missing parts that weren't in the movie. And and also with V, I hated how they glossed over his origin, really, about how he was able to survive the experimentations. He was working with a garden. He was growing flowers. Just a couple parts of his origin when he was at that concentration camp that they took out that should have been in there. And the same even with Finch, when he went back there with the drugs to try to get that experience. In the movie, they just kind of glossed over that, where, yeah, I went there last night and this is what happened to me. I think that was a great part in the book that should have been in the movie, because then with him telling you is one thing. If you're going through the steps with him like you did in the book, you have a better idea of why he made his decision at the end.
I don't know. Just talking about her being hooker versus office worker, I don't know that I have a feeling one way or the other, because I definitely can understand where she's more identifiable to every person as an office worker, because as that person, she's just accepted the fact that she's stuck here doing the office work. Maybe not be as desperate, but she herself says she's very, very reserved, not nearly as proactive as what her parents and wishes she would be. So, I mean, I think for your average person going to see the movie, they could identify with that much easier than being the hooker. But I think her journey is a better journey as the hooker. But just if you're like we're comparing it to, I think it fit the movie better that she wasn't the hooker, just because of the story being it could be anybody that just any office worker, any worker that worked better. You have.
I guess that I just think that V wouldn't pick just anybody.
Well, I think he just stumbled across her though. I don't.
Yeah, but he saw
Potential.
He knew exactly who she was because he knew her parents were and all that kind of stuff. Again, the master manipulator. He knew who to go to.
I don't think I'd go that far.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Did they explain that in the book that he knows all that?
No, not in the book. We're talking about the movie compared to the book. And in the movie, her parents were two radical protesters.
Right.
So I say he knew who he was going. After she saved him, and he knew who she was. So that's when he decided to pick her to do what he did.
At the TV station after that.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, I'm sorry.
But it was just blind luck that she stumbled across he stumbled across her in the alley in the beginning.
Yeah, because in that book, and if correct me if I'm wrong, because there's so many things I may have forgotten about it. There's nothing in there about her parents being. She doesn't know who her parents were, or she doesn't know. She knew who her mother was, but she didn't know who her father was.
No, she did because her mother killed herself, and then the father got taken away.
Okay. I thought that was the book.
No, but I'm still saying in the book, he probably picked her. He's not shown any other time in the book going around saving innocent people in alleys, and I don't think that's really his main concern. I think he might have watched her for a little while, or just said, "Oh, a girl who's trying to turn tricks. Oh, maybe she's a candidate." And then he saved her, and then he talked to her a little bit and went, "She is right for this gig," as opposed to maybe he went through that process 5 other times before he found Evie. Is like my thought process is like he selected her. And
I think part of the reason why he brings her back is because she was going to go kill. He thought maybe she had gotten to the point where this isn't a well thought out thought, but because I'm just trying to go off what we're talking about now. But that's when he takes her back again when she's so desperate that she's going to kill now. So is that why he then takes her back? Which, if she never would have gone after the Gordon's killers, would he have ever gone back and taken her again? I don't know. I don't think there's an answer. I'm just throwing it out there because that's an interesting,
I thought
question.
they kind of cheated that character with the Gordon making the way he was. The fact that wasn't her first love, to me, again, just takes away from her journey. Is the fact now she didn't really lose. Well, she lost her parents and her son and brother, but. She didn't really have that emotional attachment of this government that's somebody else that they took away from me now in the movie, but in the book, right. Because she found love with somebody she was able to be with. That was another reason why she made the decision to become V at the end.
Well, I think my major thing was the whole V torturing Evie scene, and then the whole letter, the actress's letter, and her going out in the rain was so well done in the movie. Like they transferred that part of the book, which is very powerful in the book, into the movie, made it very powerful in the movie. When I saw that, I went, why is this the only scene you're recreating, like straight out of the book? I mean, this is... I understand it's the central... It's a thing that changes Evie around. So why change anything else?
That was what made the movie, as a comic adaptation, be really crappy for me, because it's like clearly they read the subject material. Some movies you watch and you just know they didn't even know there was a book. They just kind of read the name in the bookstore and went,
the synopsis.
Yeah, let's make a movie out of that. Sounds interesting. But here it's like they read the book. They appreciate the book because they found and there were other scenes that were like shot for shot, and like the whole with the priest and everything, like the bishop, whatever, that was like perfect. And there are a couple scattered scenes. It was like, damn it. If they could just do the whole movie that way, it just... And then there's little things that they change, which the little things always piss me off the most because they're easily left the same. Like, why didn't they call the leader? Why couldn't he just be called the leader? Well, what the hell's one word? Just make him the leader. Now I have another issue with the leader is that, in the book, he's like this wimpy guy who just sits there and is like... And that's the perfect contradiction. He's in charge of this ruthless totalitarian society, and he's just a big wimp, and that's the beauty of the book for me in regards to the leader. And in the movie, he's like this worse than Hitler guy who's way off his rocker and totally hardcore, and it's like, well, I mean, yeah, it's Hollywood, and I guess that for the mindless Americans who are watching the movie that's easy for them to understand, but it takes away from the beauty of what is real. And that's so true. You know, so many government people are just worried about getting paid and having a lot of money, and they don't really care about the government that they're running or the people that they're in control of. It's all about them. And so they're not going to be all crazy and fanatical. I mean, that's very few people in history are like that. And so that was a big issue for me. And then while I agree that the masks thing looked really cool on the screen and all those people in the costumes charging towards Parliament or whatever, that was cool, the idea is absolutely absurd. In a totalitarian government where everything is seen and controlled and everything, because in the movie they never shut off the cameras and the surveillance, okay? So in the movie they're still seeing and doing everything, and he's going to ship out like 1 million masks, and they're not going to inspect those packages? Like, because there's these trucks driving with all the same package to every house in London, and not one government official says, what are in these? No, they just ship them out. Hell, I mean, they check mail in countries and governments today. You know, you can't send a letter. You couldn't send a letter in the Soviet Union without it getting opened and read through to make sure it wasn't some, you know, anti-communist propaganda. And we're supposed to, and that, like, I was just like, okay, it looks really neat, but it's complete bullshit. You know, you completely took away from the rest of the movie you're trying to make. So that really didn't work for me either.
I thought it was, I understood a little bit more with the Salt Flats, the actress that died. In the book, I kind of didn't understand why he took the poster, but then when in the scene, since they kind of made a scene of it in the movie, I was like, oh, okay, now in the book I understand why he took the poster. That was her. And maybe it's just because, for some reason, I didn't understand when I read it, but having seen it visually, that's when I could understand the connection. And, I mean, it doesn't take away from that letter any less, but I was able to see a little bit more of why he kind of stopped, why he took the poster with him.
I think as soon as the movie opened, and again, I really watched it as a movie, and then I also thought about it in comparison to the book, but I tried to enjoy it as the movie first. The world wasn't. It was just, you know, a semi-futuristic world. It wasn't burnt out buildings, or it wasn't after a war like what they show in the book, where it's like what Alan Moore thought nuclear winter would be like, and famine and all this other stuff. So it was like, okay, you're already setting it up. The setup was, you know, not before we even got to Evie, before you even got to Natalie Portman leaving her building for no reason.
See Gordon.
Yeah, she was going to see Gordon.
Oh, well, I missed that.
I missed that too. I thought, she's just going outside.
The guy that stepped out of the door, he was looking, that was Gordon. She turned around and walked out.
Oh, Jesus.
Because she heard somebody else
Yeah,
coming.
that was the whole thing, because he was supposed to have the big date with Gordon.
Yeah.
She thought he was straight.
And then that's when she went to his house and he said, nothing would have happened anyway, darling. I don't do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it was even when the next day when at the TV station, he said I was never stood up by something like such a beautiful woman or something along those lines.
Yeah.
See, and that's probably where the whole, you know, me contrasting the movie to the book made me not even picture that. But not even having the world be what it was in the book, I thought kind of put it in
why no
wrong...
cameras and stuff? You know, they don't really show that.
Well, now, I know the movie world wasn't quite as bleak, but didn't you get a sense of everybody being afraid to even step out because every scene was the same family sitting in front of the TV together because they didn't want anybody out?
That you did, but did you see the homes they were in?
Yeah.
I mean, they were nice homes.
They're average. It was average apartment type stuff for a middle class family.
Houses were nice.
Some of them were, but then that to me was just upper echelon people that.
Or when you go see Evie at her workplace, these don't look like people.
Yeah, they're just all popping around. Hey, we're gonna.
But there was no war. That's the whole thing. There was no war in this story.
They avoided the war.
This was what had happened was the government had released that virus which killed everybody.
There was a war, and
then they blamed it on terrorists when it was actually them doing it. So there was no. I never got the idea that where there was any kind of nuclear war or anything like that. This was the whole government coming up with a phony war to take over the government.
Yeah,
and that's where of course you
producing
get all
a scare.
Yeah.
But you had a war over in the Americas that they helped avoid by doing what they did with the virus.
So they released a virus there, scared everybody into allowing them to take over,
right?
And then that's what because I never got it.
Orange level alert.
So it wasn't quite as bleak or destroyed, but I still got a sense of nobody wanted to go out because they hadn't realized what they had done, and it was too late.
Right.
They were already under control. So they all just stayed there.
And you didn't really get the idea that there was a camera and a microphone in every house, observing every movement that the people were making.
They just drove through the towns in those.
Yeah, they had that little thing.
They had
It's
the
like,
surveillance
as soon as the
vans.
truck goes past, now you can say whatever you want. Whereas in the book,
I
every
took it.
second is
I
being
took it that
monitored.
truck
Was
enforced it, but there was still everything everywhere because nobody was outside at all after curfew. And if they did, they were afraid the fingermen were going to get them.
Yeah, and everybody's afraid.
And then
that was
as
the
soon
whole
as
bullocks thing. Where everybody's afraid to say bullocks until they started realizing, and then everybody was saying bullocks.
And when he played the I guess it was the was it Beethoven's Fifth in the movie as well over the loudspeakers that first time when he blew up?
No, he used the 1812 overture
Okay.
the entire time.
Put that on the blacklist.
You really got a sense of everybody knew that somebody was out there because those speakers were never used for that. I mean, They came out like, oh my God, something's playing on the speakers and it's music? What? They were just amazed. So to me, I always got the sense that there was everything around and everybody was afraid to go out of their room even.
Yeah, there'd be announcements over those, but to have all of a sudden to have in the middle of the night something playing over those scared them.
I didn't like how they kind of spoon-fed you when she woke up the next morning after being in the shadow gallery and you saw V's hands without the glove. Like, that was something I was like, you know what? If you follow along,
Hollywood.
You can understand. There's a reason why he wears all that garb.
Yeah, but
it's because he was one of the reasons he's badly burned. Yeah, I don't think you need. To me that was spoon fed, and it's like they're assuming people are idiots.
It was such an odd scene. He's flipping the little egg sandwich thing, and then he's like,
with the apron.
Pardon me, and he reaches down and puts his gloves on. That's better.
But
well, if it's better, why didn't you have them on the whole time you were cooking? I think the whole thing didn't make any sense.
To me, I took that as he just wasn't thinking about the fact that she would have woke up yet. That if she's not around, he does not wear the gloves and everything all the time.
But then he shouldn't have said, "Oh, that's better." Like, it made it sound like
for me, that's better for her because he thought it would grotesque her.
I don't know. It just didn't sound like it to me. It was one of
like
those scenes that really stuck in my head the whole movie. I'm like, that was so stupid.
I kind of liked how when they're watching, what was it, the Count of Monte Cristo, and it ended, and you saw that the Plethoro, was that his name, that was killed, and she's like, "Did you kill him?" "Yes, I did." Like, he wasn't denying, he wasn't kind of trying to cover it up. "Yes, I did." "And did you use my security pass? Do you want me to lie to you, or do you want the truth?" Like, he had no problems just being straightforward. He wasn't trying to sugarcoat anything. He 100% believed in the cause, and he would come right out. "If you want me to lie to you, I'll lie to you." "No, I didn't," type of thing. And I just thought that was
another scene that, again, could have been easily replicated from the book to the movie. Okay, he kills him in the movie and the book, but why couldn't he kill him on the train? With those other guys sitting around and the lights go dark.
Would have made for a cool action sequence.
Well, yeah, you're riding on the train, and then all of a sudden it goes dark, and then they look up and there's some commotion.
No, he doesn't kill him. He infects him with the virus. Well, I guess he does. He drives him insane.
He kills the bodyguards and then drags him out of the train back to the shadow.
And plays the mind fuck
replica
on him.
of the five
whatever.
rooms.
I mean, the point is, it's just like, okay, well, you're gonna kill him. You're gonna spend screen minutes to kill him. Well, just kill him. At least kill him on the train. Even at least make the train involved. I don't know.
Because they did so many things that were good. That you want them as, again, not to go back to Sin City, but
exactly. It's proof that it can be done.
It can be done, and I think with this one, because you don't have to have the big special effects, and you don't have to have you can. I just think they could have done, and I still like the movie. I still would. I probably would go see it again, or rent it, or buy it, or whatever, because the secondary characters are just great actors, like Jamie was talking about earlier. But the other, what do you think of the romance thing?
That I didn't like.
Of them amping up the romance between the two of them
in the movie.
Yeah.
I felt like she was falling for him, but I don't. Maybe I felt like he was falling for her more.
Oh yeah.
It didn't,
because they did amp it up. I mean,
I know I saw this post, and I do think they made him too human in the movie. In the book, they just kind of made it not so much like a stone cold killer, but they gave him too much emotion in the movie. I didn't think they needed to.
Well, that was your Phantom of the Opera little thing going there.
Yeah.
I mean, you had him fall for her as his protege, and
I don't know if I actually felt like she fell for him. I thought it was more of appreciation.
Yeah, I agree. I think they put it more on him falling for her as being one of the first women that he's come across that is hasn't rejected him or whatever they want to put.
Because that last when he was dying in her arms, and then he was like, "Oh, I love you," da 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 da. Like, it got too. He, even though he says in the book, he does say "I love you" in the book, but it's so not a romance thing. When I read it in the book, it was like, you know, more of like a caring thing, or that he knows that he was going to pass it on, or whatever. But in the movie, it was like, I actually rolled my eyes when he died. I went, "Oh, they just ruined that part for me."
I didn't quite understand what they were thinking when they had her leave the Shadow Gallery after she came out from the torture scene. Like in the book, she just stays there for the rest of the time training, but in the movie, she left. I don't understand the significance of having her leave as opposed to just having her stay and study.
Well, actually, that's a point in the book that I thought was kind of weird, that they would have her just stay and not leave. But in the having her stay in the world in that book, she couldn't really go out, back out, because of what Brian was saying about the cameras everywhere, and they kind of knew who she was and things like that. In here, in the movie that they did, I thought it made a little more sense, because it gave her time to realize what he did, take into account what he did, and she could make up her own mind and come back to him saying, "Yes, I will, I'll follow you in what you're doing."
So that was kind of a test to see if she would come back?
In a way, I think.
Yeah,
I
let
think
it go. If it comes back, it's meant to be.
Yeah, he gave her everything that he could. He showed her everything, took away her fear, and then she had to make the ultimate decision on whether or not to join him in his vendetta.
Well, and I have to say, just totally off topic, but still in the movie, I love the Shadow Gallery. The way it was set up. I love the little hideout. That I always love back caves and hideouts and secret places, and I just thought that was great. It was a lot of fun to see all the stuff he had sitting around as contraband.
Here's a question. Do you agree with Alan Moore, that the reason why he got pissed?
No.
There was a good reason for him to be pissed?
Okay, Alan, here, if you're listening, get over yourself, okay?
No, I totally agree with him. It's his book. It's his work. He should have
the basic, I think the basic, a lot of the ideas were changed.
Oh, yeah.
So just put what inspired by. You can put your name on it, okay? A graphic novel by David Lloyd.
Wait a minute. Wait. Because we had this whole thing before where we were talking about Mark Waid and writing Captain America, and they changed his story, and he didn't want his name on it.
But he didn't change his story. That's the whole thing. There wasn't enough of a change in the story.
They did. They changed the story.
In V for Vendetta.
Oh, yes.
No, not enough.
A lot of things have changed.
One of the things. The biggest thing.
Get over yourself, Alan Moore.
Here's the biggest change that we haven't talked about yet.
Was changed.
When
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I'll buy. I'll get your name the hell off that story. But this one, there was enough inspired by and enough that was verbatim out of the book that you can just put down based on the graphic novel by Alan Moore.
No.
Keep your name on it.
No.
If you spent years sculpting this perfect thing, and then Hollywood completely bastardized.
And meanwhile, this isn't the first one that they bastardized. This is the third one, or not the fourth one.
Did he take money, or did he give the money back?
I don't know. We'll find out. Somebody will know out there.
Tell me
Alan,
that.
could you give us a
Because
call?
if he didn't give the money
back, send us an email, Alan.
Then fine. But
and meanwhile, it goes deeper than that. It doesn't just go about the outcome of the movie. It also goes in certain things that Joel Silver said about what Alan Moore's
again.
He took offense.
Get over yourself. No. Get over yourself. Alan.
You know what? The biggest change in this for me is the video when he ransacks where he takes over the movie studio and he puts out that video. In the book, he's putting the blame on the people. If you read the book, he's like, I now, what does he say? Like, I now fire you. It's your reason why they're here. Da-da-da-da.
But he did that in the movie.
No, wait. But he said, and then he goes, if you want to redeem yourself, you got 2 years to do it. If not, you're out, right? In the movie, it was more of a stirring speech. It was more of a, you need to, there was less blame involved. And that's why I think the central character of who V for Vendetta is in the book about the total anarchist that is going to go up against the government, but it is going to either do it alone or is either going to do it with you or by himself. But in this one, it was more of like he was the in the movie, it was like he was the one that was going to lead the way. In the book, I never got that he would give one rat's ass if anybody would have followed him, and he would have done it no matter what. But in the movie, like what Brian was saying about sending out all the stuff and rallying the people,
I'm giving you 1 year. Join me.
Yeah, never got that from the book. Not to that degree. And I thought that was a huge change in the movie. The whole thing of having them the people rising up, because nobody rose up in the book. It was complete. He even says it. It's chaos. You got to have chaos before you can have anarchy. Before they start to realize where they need to go. He was just the flame to the trigger. That's it. He was not providing any kind of final answer to all of this. He was just going to light the match, and that was it. And I thought that was a huge fundamental difference between the book and the movie.
Well, I kind of felt in the movie he would have blown up Parliament at the end the same way with or without them.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. In the movie, I thought, though, it just was too much of a he was too much of a coach, like too much of a trying to lead them out of the way. Where in the movie, in the book, it just wasn't. That when I read that scene again with the where he's talking about it's no good blaming the drop in work standards upon bad management either, though to be sure the management is very bad. In fact, let's not mince words. The management is terrible. Blah, blah, blah. But who elected them? It was you. You who appointed these people. You who gave them the power to make your decisions for you. You are no longer an asset to the company. You have no spine. You have no pride. I will, however, be generous. You will be granted 2 years to show me some improvement in your work. So it's much more of a condemnation than it is. Is that the right word? Condemning the people. Condemning. As opposed to trying to rally them up like they did in the movie.
But even the movie, if he's trying to rally them up, he still would have blown it up.
I think it's a different rallying style, but I think the ideology behind it is very, 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 very different. I think it's very different.
I agree with you 100%, Peter.
Well, you're both wrong.
And again, the whole the stuff that the movie didn't even touch, the whole treatment of the government fighting itself and all that stuff, that makes it very different for me. And I'm very politically minded, so I was paying very close attention to how they were lying and cheating and stealing amongst themselves and plotting behind each other's backs and all that kind of stuff. That and that's, they don't even touch that. And I think that's an essential part of the book.
They couldn't.
Well, I know that.
Oh, they know. Yeah.
But another reason for Alan Moore to say, then it's not my story.
But even in 2.5 hours, every
it's
time
not his story.
Every time the leader
and
Finch were there, you could feel it in Finch's. And not Finch, in Creedy's face, he would back away. I just knew that he was plotting behind the leader's back. I knew that there was
Creedy in the movie.
Yeah, in the animosity between them. I just took for granted that there was all.
But it wasn't that in the. And I think the other major thing that they should have included is the whole Rose subplot. I know they absolutely can't. The character Rose, where she actually shoots the leader in the movie.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Which is because
that's more important that she kills the leader.
Exactly. That's the whole point. The people do it.
Because to me, that's more of a catalyst for people to rally up behind V's cause than if nobody knows if V killed the leader. We'll call him, since that's the way he is in the book, even though it's not in the movie. Nobody knows that he kills him. But the fact that she did it right out in broad daylight, whenever it was, in front of a crowd of people,
and he did manipulate those events he
killed her husband.
Yeah, well, not only that, but there's that other scene in the garden. There's so many important scenes in the garden where he says, Evie says, "Are you going to kill the leader?" And he goes, "No, I'm producing a special Rose for that situation." Well, the character's name is Rose, so he's obviously manipulating that whole thing too. But like what you're talking about, she is just. I think it adds to that chaos. It adds to that underlying mess.
Let's hear what Sean Whelan has to say. That's not Sean Whelan's one.
Journey.
Hey guys, it's Sean Whelan here, Dr. Norge on the CGS forum, and I'm here with my friend Jim Segulin, and we're going to do just a real quick audio comment on V for Vendetta. I read the actual graphic novel, and my friend Jim, I think you've only seen the movie, but you got to page through the graphic novel. What'd you think of the movie?
The movie actually was outstanding. Looking at it just as a movie, not looking at any deep symbolism or anything like that, it was. The cinematography, the acting was incredible. Just the story that it told, I thought it kept going, pace kept going through great. I thought, it was a good, solid piece of cinematography.
One of the things I liked the most is they really captured each of the characters from the V for Vendetta graphic novel accurately. They did make some changes to modernize the flick a little bit, which this was written back in the 80s. And I don't mind the fact that they actually updated it because they didn't make the classic mistake that they make with comic book movies where they lose the character. The character of V is just as dynamic, just as interesting as he was in the comic. And it was just great. I loved it. What did you think of the whole symbolism to obviously the politics today and everything like that?
Well, the funny thing is, looking at it, I can see where someone would say, oh, they're talking just exactly how things are going with the U.S., but you also, if you don't think that the U.S. right now is in a state where, it's, throwing out all freedoms and all liberties, you're not going to see that in the movie. If that makes any sense. I don't think it does by the look on your face. But
you have me baffled.
I have you baffled. You can look at this and just see a good movie in it. Or if you look deeper, you can see, like, a lot of people are saying that, with the kind of like in the movie, they basically took out a lot of basic civil freedoms that we have today and threw them out the window for the movie for sake of security and for sake of the good of the country and stuff like that.
You made a real good point, actually. One of the things that I did like about this, and one of the things I do like about this story, I love deep stories. I like stories that have symbolism, and this had a lot of that. A lot of comments about society, about greed, about politicians, about government. And one of the things that I like about this, though, when you get right down to it, it's a good story. A lot of times writers will put so much symbolism in and they try to overdo that so much they forget having a good story. I'm a big fan of a deep story where you can go, like, I could see seeing this movie and catching a whole bunch of things in it that I didn't catch the first time around. I love that, but I'll watch it again because I liked the story the first time around.
Okay, yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say, but you said it probably more clearer. You can see all this extra stuff, or you could just see just the story itself.
Right.
One of the criticisms I heard, which I completely disagree with, they said it dragged a little in the middle. Disagree with that completely. I thought throughout beginning to end, it told the story, and it told a good story.
Yeah, and like the comic, it didn't have a wasted moment. It was, and I mean, really, it was incredibly accurate to the comic. Yes, they made some changes, but when they made the changes, they kept the story elements of the comic in there. Some of the cool things that I really, really liked from the movie, I liked the fact they did that V domino effect, but then when they showed the people at the end all wearing the V masks, it was almost like they were redoing the domino scene, but with people.
Yeah,
and they were all, the victims of the government, and it was just really, really cool.
Yeah,
the visuals of it, honestly, being a fan of the comic, and actually I read the comic from the library. I don't actually own it, which is really sad because I love the story. But being a fan of the comic, they so captured it visually. The music was wonderful. This is how a comic book movie should be done. I don't mind if they make little changes as long as they capture the essence, and they really, really did that. So, do you have anything else you want to add before? Because we've really got to cut this out so they can...
Well, that's about it then.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for letting us share our comments, and looking forward to the next book of the month.
And you can listen to Sean Whelan's Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast.
I do want to just quickly say, Brian, when you said about how in the movie they don't have cameras and whatnot around, I think they just never talked about it, but if you remember, there was a couple times when Finch and his partner talked that they put up that little thing that I assumed was a scrambler that allowed him to talk without being detected.
No, but I mean, it just isn't. It wasn't like in your face the way it is in the comic, and I think that really sets the tone for the comic. Is that everybody's every movement is being recorded. We have another audio comment that we got to get to here.
They say that there's a broken light for every heart on Broadway. They say that life's a game and then they take the board away. They give you masks and costumes and an outline of the story, then leave you all to improvise their vicious cabaret. In no longer pretty cities, there are fingers in the kitties. There are warrants, forms and chitties and a jackboot on the stair. Sex and death and human grime in monochrome. For one thing down, at least the trains are run on time. They don't go anywhere.
What the hell are we listening to?
It's this song, this part.
Either on their backs or on their knees. There are ladies who just simply freeze and dare not turn away. And the widows that refuse to cry be dressed in garter and bow tie, be taught to keep their legs up high in this vicious That's the 1998 show. The ballet on the burning stage. The documentary scene upon the fractured screen. The dreadful poem scrawled upon the crumpled page. There's a policeman with an honest soul that has seen whose head is on the pole. He grunts as he fills his pride bowl.
We're going to play that whole thing at the end of this. We'll let it play out at the end because obviously that was the thing that he's doing at the beginning of book two, right?
Book 2.
The prologue?
Yeah, and we'll also
it was
put
done
it up
by
Prelude?
David J., who's from Love and Rockets, and he worked with Alan Moore to record it. So
That's pretty good.
So there's an actual recording of it.
Yeah.
That's cool. And
That
we'll
was
put it
neat.
up somewhere on the site as well.
we have one more.
So that's to answer your question.
now it's a real song.
So
Yeah.
I knew somebody had done it. There was no way they'd put that in there
We
without.
have one more comment that was sent to us, and this one's from Evan Cantrell. He says he really loved this book. He said, while I don't personally agree with some of the politics, I feel that Alan Moore wrote the story in such a way that one side isn't really vilified more than the other. In fact, I think this is what makes V such a compelling character. On one hand, you can almost see how he is justified in his vendetta, but then he goes and basically brainwashes Evie with her fake imprisonment just to win her to his side. All in all, I think V is one of those great books that really challenges the reader and definitely gives you some great ideas to think about. I also got the chance to see the movie over the weekend. I think the movie was a decent adaptation of the book and really enjoyed it. The most notable difference between the movie and the book was the way the Wachowskis strived to make the bad guys truly bad and the good guy truly good. Anyone going back to Evie's imprisonment in the movie, V basically begs Evie to forgive him, while in the book he doesn't make any apologies for his actions. I also felt that the movie was a little heavy-handed in its political stance on certain issues, whereas the book was slightly more ambiguous. Oh, he's going to see us in Heroes Con, apparently. So.
You think he brainwashed her?
One man's terrorist and another man's freedom fighter. I don't think so.
I don't either. Because there's nothing in there where he's like saying to her, you must go against the government, da-da-da-da-da, you know. If anything, he's... I don't see that as brainwashing.
I saw it as
I mean, it's brainwashing techniques, but...
That's how I viewed it, as brainwashing.
I saw it as being liberated.
Brain cleaning.
Yeah, that's what I was. I was thinking liberated.
But in the
just
book...
think, if you're not afraid of dying, think of how much you're not going to be afraid of then.
Yeah, but humans are built with fear in them to help preserve their life. By removing all fear is kind of a bad thing, because now you're basically just throwing your... Huh?
In this world, it's a good thing, because you're able to see the fear that they've been putting on you.
Well, but you still need to have some fear. They really hyped it up like, I'm not even afraid to die anymore. Like, you could still be a freedom fighter but still not want to die. I mean, like, there's a big difference there,
Just don't be a martyr then.
I just see brainwashing as...
Martyr.
Martyr.
I'm thinking,
No,
shoot
a
me
little
off.
bit different.
I just see brainwashing as trying to turn someone over to your ideals by like constant repetition of...
No, there's all kinds of brainwashing,
I don't know if I see that. Brainwashing.
I don't know what else I would even call it.
I saw it interrogation tactics, and
Well, it was more brainwashing her against the government to go to his side by showing their tactics and what they did, and by they just kept going at her and going at her, even though she kept saying she knew nothing about it, and they kept doing it to her until she finally saw the light and came over to his side, or realized that the government was bad to begin with.
I guess because if it was a complete brainwashing thing, she would not have any. She wouldn't care about not killing or killing or anything like that. But she still even.
Well, that's why it wasn't complete. He had to do other things to her.
I mean, if he just wanted to show her the light, he could have sat her down in the room and had hours and hours worth of conversation with her, intellectual back and forth, and she would have come out with that and said, I think you're right. I think, we do need to stand up for this, and I do see things differently now. By starving her and putting her in a light-deprived room, in a cold thing with rats coming at her, and she shaves her head, and that's brainwashing, because she comes out with it with the same result, but she was not treated humanely, and that that's part of like the whole brainwashing scheme. That's if I want you to think the way I do, I talk to you about it. I don't kidnap you and torture you. I mean, that's
Although we could.
Yeah, but if you think about it, wasn't he kind of talking to her up to that point, trying to get her to understand his point of view.
Exactly. And then he says, it's not working, so I got to take drastic measures, which means I got to brainwash her to get what I want.
I
don't know.
I can't agree. He's using the tactics, but I can't agree that he brainwashed.
Because he's free. I mean, there's the scene is so obviously that she's being freed, and he goes back to the whole mother and the father thing. And there's some psychological, theories and things like that. You know how they always say like back pain sometimes is psychological, mental, or asthma is mental and things like these
OC.
These things these experiences that you've had when you were younger or whatever manifest themselves in like to physical ailments later in life. Like that's how I took this, is that he's getting rid of all that stuff that she has been going through. The mother, the father dying, Gordon dying, all like boom, boom, all these things in her life that that led up to her not being able to be free, and then he frees her by it's agree. Yeah, I don't agree with the tactics, or I not agree, but the tactics are harsh. But I don't know if I see it as brainwashing. Maybe, and again, it's probably just the word he used to use, but
I don't know. I wouldn't know what other word to use to describe it, because that's exactly what I thought when I was reading it. I only have one question.
Yeah.
The whole little
Stockholm syndrome, would that be a better way of putting it?
No,
because she doesn't. She didn't
sympathize.
Yeah. The whole remember the 5th of November. Is that like a true historical thing? Did someone try to blow up Parliament?
Yeah, Guy Fawkes.
Okay.
I did like how they put that in the movie at the very beginning.
Little
that's
scene,
what he looks like, and he's that's an annual event over there that they burn.
Yeah,
they burn guys. They're called guys, and they it's a bonfire night, and it's supposed to celebration
burn him in effigy.
Yeah. It was it was him and a group of Christians was it Christians or Catholics? I have it here, where they were going up
the
against
same thing, Peter. Catholic Christians.
Well, not quite.
No,
not
they're
quite.
definitely different.
Yeah.
Well, Catholics are Christians.
Well,
Catholics
but I
are
mean,
Christians.
You can't say.
crack.
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah.
Let's see.
Every Christian has a sect.
The short answer, Guy, he was one of the members of the Gunpowder
You
Plot.
guys got too much up down stuff going on. We don't have that.
In 1605, in which a group of Catholics attempted to blow up the Houses of Parliament and kill James I, the King of England, to protest Protestant rule. And
You wacky Catholics are like that too.
there was a whole bunch
Got
of
the
other-
Crusades and all that fun stuff going on.
Yeah. There's just a few other little things, just a few more comments from people. Obviously, like the movie appealed and didn't appeal. Everybody has the same arguments that we're having. I don't think it was as different though. You can't. I mean, there are some fundamental changes, but there's still enough in it that makes it.
I thought it
its own
complemented the
movie.
book enough that there were some parts in the book that I had problems following. That in the movie, having seen it visually, I was able to understand a little bit better. But having read the book and then seeing the movie, you definitely want to read the book if you enjoyed the movie.
Carl Arthur says, this book for me is one of those books that changed the way you think about things. I bought it and didn't read it for like a year when I was in high school. Then I read it in one sitting and reread it every day for a week.
Jeez. That's a little brainwashing there.
Yeah.
I get a hobby other than that book.
Let's see.
I don't know if I could do that a week straight.
I would be so bored out of my mind. I would.
Green Skeleton says, I'm trying to make a really strange metaphor on the differences of storytelling across the mediums and across the oceans. Case in point, the multiple V masks. The comic did not need to use that device to make his point. I guess moviegoers need a little more help, or at least Hollywood thinks they need the help.
I think that's it. Hollywood thinks they need the help.
Yeah, he goes, now that I think of it, let's all put on V masks and retake Hollywood. TV show remakes and low-hand vehicles be damned. I just thought that was funny.
I will admit, I really did love that scene.
It looked dynamic.
It was the Tiananmen Square type scene where they stood down the tanks, and then just the ending scene of them taking off the masks. I mean, I guess I'm a sucker for that. It got me when you saw the little girl.
I saw the tear. I was sitting next to it.
And Stephen Fry popped up, and then the woman, the actress. I thought it was great.
Again, I agree that it worked visually. I just thought that it was inappropriate in the movie.
I agree with you about the mail system. There's no way they would have gotten them all out. But
one of the listeners on the forum said something about seeing the faces of all the dead characters or the characters that were taken away when they reveal their masks. Kind of took the movie into too much of like a metaphysical kind of thing. Like it was so literal up to that point, which is something you can play with that in the book. You can play with storytelling techniques and things like that. But the book was so straight. I mean, the movie was so straightforward up to that point that he said when it got to that, it was like, whoa, okay, obviously like really pounding it over your head. These are
He could be anybody.
ideals. Yeah. Zero Ice says, we've all said stuff about the story, but could I mention something about the art in the book? It was a change of pace. It looked like watercolors were used, and it seemed to fit well. The dark parts were dark, while the watercolors still gave the images a dreary look. And I have to give it up for the penciler to be able to draw the same mask over and over and over again from different angles, but yet the mask never changes, which is eerie considering the facial features of the masks always seem to fit in the moment. And Tack wrote, I don't know how the movie could have been better. It has done great justice to the original text. The changes from comic to film were minimal, allowing the message to stay the same. If anything, the movie was easier to understand and more linear, but perhaps prior knowledge of the characters and story from the comic clouded my judgment. And also about the change in Evie, Kid Benicia writes, I have to agree that with an earlier post that Evie's upgrade in professions bothered me. I couldn't really put my finger on why, however. The fact that her story arc starts from a higher place in society wasn't really written into the story, a la some sort of Fight Club deconstruction and reconstruction of the psyche. Her story was more powerful in the book, in my opinion, because of the fact that she was so desperate in the beginning. So really, the only reason for a change of circumstances was to make a few plot points easier, her being at the television station, her relationship with her boss, leading her to living with him, etc. Normally, this sort of thing in adaptations doesn't bother me, but for some reason this time it did. Oh well. I thought the film was very well done, and the army of V's at the end was an inspired take on Evie taking up the mantle. Cool visual. I didn't like the Matrix-y slow-mo violence at the end.
I'm not convinced in the movie, though, she did take on the mantle.
I didn't get that either.
Just that she made the decision that, that was kind of his final wish to get blown up and to blow up Harlem. But that's the one thing that's in the movie. I didn't get the impression that the next scene is her putting on the mask.
It's one of the reasons why I think in the book the torture scene is so powerful is because she's freed and she does stay with him, and you see her in the background training, and she's reading and all this. So you just knew that she was going to take over, and that's what he had her there for. And I thought that made it even a stronger thing. In the movie, it was just like he woke her from a deep nap, and she said, all right, I'm going to go out and get some coffee, and then I'll be back for you later. It just didn't ring right to me, that whole part of it. But that didn't bother me as some of the other things did.
All right. I guess we've said everything we need to say.
Yeah. It was good. What do you guys give it?
Oh, 5 out of 5. The book.
What about the movie?
3.
I'll say 5 out of 5. Movie 4 out of 5.
Yeah, so that's what I do. 5 out of 5. Movie 4. Even with all the problems I have.
From what I've read of the book, yeah, I do the same. 5 and 4.
The book 4 out of 5 because still the first couple issues were really tough to get through, and I'd also give the movie 4 out of 5.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad we finally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like I said in the beginning. It's one I've been meaning to read for since '86, so or '88 or whatever.
Can't wait to read it again.
When I've been reading it like Brian has, couple pages, couple chapters, it just didn't get through. So I'm going to still continue that to get done it. I want to finish it.
Cool.
All right, so next month, April, it's Marvel time, and we're going to do the Life and Death of Captain Marvel. That trade is available from In Stock Trades for 40% off. So check it out.
We should have did a nice April Fool's and made it Identity Disc.
And it includes,
Monica
as the
Rambeau's
title
disc?
suggests, the Death of Captain Marvel graphic novel in the back. So it's like a whole bunch. It's all the stories that lead up to that, and then the Jim Starlin Marvel graphic novel. So.
Oh, phew, I thought you were talking about Monica Rambeau for a second.
No.
Fitting in with the whole big cosmic thing going on
Right.
in Marvel right now.
Right.
Wow.
And rumors and
Awesome.
rumblings of a new Captain Marvel and such.
Sure. All right.
You gonna play us out with that song?
Yeah. We'll see you next month.
Bye.
They say that there's a broken light for every heart on Broadway. They say that life's a game and then they take the board away. They give you masks and costumes and an outline of the story, then leave you all to improvise their vicious cabaret. In no longer pretty cities, there are fingers in the kitties, there are the ballet on the burning stage, the documentary scene upon the fractured screen, the dreadful poem scrawled upon the crumpled page. There's a policeman with an honest soul, but a scene whose head is on the pole. He grunts as he fills his pride bowl with a feeling of unease. He briskly frisks the torn remains for a fingerprint, our prints and stains, and endeavors to ignore the change that he walks into his knees. But his master in the dark nearby inspects the hands with brutal eye that have never brushed a lover's thigh, but have squeezed the nation's throat. He hungers in his secret dreams, the harsh embrace of cruel machine. His lover is not what she seems, and she will not leave a note. At last, a 1998 show, the situation tragedy, grand opera slick with soap, cliffhangers with no hope, the watercoloring, the bloody gallery. There's a girl who busted will not shop, is desperate for her father's love, believes the hand beneath the glove is what she needs to hold. Though she doubts her husband's morality, she decides that she is what is in the land of doing as she please, and outside in the cold, the backdrops peel and the sets give way, and the cast get eaten by the play. There's a murderer at the matinee, there are dead men in the aisles. The patrons and the actors draw uncertain if the show is through. Sideline looks await the cue with the pose of mashy smiles. At last, a 1998 show, the Todd song no one ever sings, the curfew chorus line, the comedy